Two little dogs begged an elephant for help. What happened next made the world cry. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The African savanna stretched endlessly under the weight of the afternoon sun. Heat shimmered above the golden grass, and the air hummed with the low buzz of distant insects. In the midst of this vast, quiet wilderness stood Kanoa, a lone elephant, her massive ears lazily flapping as she pulled at a patch of brittle shrubs. Life out here was predictable, slow, steady, and ruled by instinct. But today, something broke the rhythm. From far across the cracked earth, two tiny shapes appeared, weaving through the tall grass. At first, Kanoa thought they were jackals, but as they drew closer, she saw they were no threat. Two small dogs, barely larger than her trunk, their fur dusty and their paws worn from travel. They weren't barking. They weren't growling. Instead, they moved with an urgency that seemed human. When they reached her, they sat back on their hind legs, front paws pressed together like they were pleading. Kanoa froze, her dark eyes narrowing. This was no ordinary encounter. The dogs stared up at her, their bodies trembling, their eyes locked on hers as if trying to speak without words. Something deep inside her told her they needed help. Kanoa's massive frame cast a shadow over the two dogs, but they didn't flinch. Their tiny chests rose and fell quickly, their eyes darting from her face to the open plains behind them, as if urging her to follow. The older of the two lowered his paws and stepped closer, his nose almost touching the tip of Kanoa's trunk. She lowered it cautiously, inhaling their scent. Dust, sweat, and something else, the faint trace of human skin. The younger dog let out a small, pitiful whine, glancing over his shoulder before turning back to her. There was no aggression, no fear, only desperation. Kanoa's instincts told her to turn away. She was a wild elephant. She did not follow the commands of smaller creatures. Yet, something about their plea rooted her to the spot. These weren't random wanderers. They had a purpose. With a deep rumble, she took a slow step forward. The dogs leapt to their feet, trotting a few paces ahead, then stopping to make sure she followed. It was an unspoken agreement, an alliance formed without a single word. Kanoa didn't know where they were leading her, but she could feel it in the air. It was urgent. The dogs moved quickly, weaving through the dry grass, their small bodies slipping between thorny bushes without hesitation. Kanoa followed, her heavy steps pressing deep prints into the sun-baked earth. Each thud of her massive feet sent puffs of dust swirling into the air. From time to time, she slowed, scanning the horizon for danger. The savanna could be unforgiving, lions in the tall grass, hyenas on the hunt. But the dogs never wavered. Every few strides, they looked back at her, their eyes bright with urgency, as if to say, "Don't stop now." The land shifted as they moved. Grass gave way to cracked, dry earth, and the distant cries of birds overhead broke the heavy silence. Kanoa's trunk swayed, tasting the air for clues. Suddenly, the older dog halted, ears pricked. The younger froze beside him. Both turned, their heads toward the east, their bodies tense. That's when Kanoa heard it, faint, almost swallowed by the wind. A sound that didn't belong to the wild. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't the call of another elephant. It was a cry, weak, human, and it was coming from somewhere up ahead. The cry grew louder as they pressed on, cutting through the heavy air like a thin blade. Kanoa's pace quickened, her great ears sweeping forward to catch every sound. The dogs darted ahead, leaping over roots and ducking beneath low branches, never once looking back to see if she followed. The scent in the air changed, dry dust mingled with something sharper, the tang of disturbed earth. As they reached the edge of a shallow ravine, Kanoa peered down into a dry riverbed. There, half hidden by a mound of collapsed dirt, was a small human child. His tiny arms flailed weakly, his face streaked with tears and dust. Every movement sent more loose soil sliding toward him, threatening to bury him deeper. The older dog barked for the first time, short, sharp, and urgent, while the younger whined, pacing in frantic circles. Kanoa felt a ripple of alarm surge through her. One wrong move could collapse the fragile wall of dirt entirely. She had to act, and fast. Lowering her massive body toward the riverbed, She extended her trunk, the tip hovering just above the trembling child. There was no room for hesitation now. This was a race against time. Kanoa's trunk moved with a precision that belied its size. She carefully brushed away loose dirt, each motion slow and deliberate so she wouldn't frighten the child or trigger another collapse. The boy's wide eyes locked on hers, his crying softening to shallow, panicked breaths. The older dog stood at the edge of the riverbed, barking in short bursts, urging her on. The younger stayed near the child's head, his tiny frame pressed against the unstable soil as if shielding him. Grain by grain, Kanoa cleared a space, widening the gap without letting the walls cave in. Her tusks stayed angled away, every movement calculated. Finally, she slid her trunk gently beneath the boy's arms, curling just enough to cradle him without squeezing. The moment she lifted him free, the dirt behind him collapsed in a rush. A cloud of dust rose into the air. But the danger had passed. He was safe. The boy clung instinctively to her trunk, his small fingers gripping the coarse skin as if he knew she'd saved him. Then, in the distance, came the pounding of feet and the desperate voices of people running closer. Help was on the way, but they were about to witness something unforgettable. The first to arrive was a woman, her face pale and streaked with sweat. She stumbled down the riverbank, crying out the boy's name. The moment she saw him cradled gently in Kanoa's trunk, her knees buckled in relief. The dogs ran to her, tails wagging furiously despite their exhaustion. She dropped to her knees, hugging them both before reaching for her son. Kanoa bent low, releasing him into her arms with the care of a mother passing her own child. The woman held him tight, sobbing into his dusty hair. "Thank you," she whispered over and over, to the dogs, to the towering elephant watching silently above them. By then, villagers had gathered, murmuring in disbelief at the sight. An elephant rescuing a human child. It was the kind of story elders told in myths, not something you witnessed under the burning African sun. Some pulled out phones to record, capturing the moment as the boy's mother looked up at Kanoa with eyes full of awe. But in the crowd's amazement, one villager stepped forward, recognizing the dogs. "They're not strays," he said softly. "They belong to the boy's family, and they've been missing for days." The truth was about to make this miracle even greater. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the villager explained. The two dogs, named Tycho and Luma, had vanished 3 days earlier, the same day the boy went missing. His family had feared the worst, that predators had taken them all. But the truth was far more extraordinary. Tycho and Luma had stayed by the boy's side after he fell into the collapsed burrow, keeping watch through the freezing nights. They'd barked at scavengers, chased off snakes, and licked the child's face to keep him awake when his cries grew faint. On the third day, realizing the boy's condition was worsening, they'd made a desperate choice. They left him, not to abandon him, but to find help. And somehow, they'd chosen the one creature in the savannah strong enough to save him. The mother clutched both dogs, her tears soaking into their fur. The villagers looked from them to Kanoa, who still stood nearby, her great form casting a protective shadow. In that moment, there were no species, no boundaries, only gratitude, life, and the unspoken language that had brought them together. And then, Kanoa did something no one expected. She stepped closer to the family, lowering her head in quiet acknowledgement. One of the villagers had captured the entire scene on video, from the moment Kanoa emerged from the grass to the tearful reunion between the boy and his mother. That night, the footage spread across social media like wildfire. Within hours, it had been shared in dozens of countries. News anchors called it a miracle of the savannah, while wildlife experts marveled at the elephant's empathy and the dog's unwavering loyalty. Comments poured in from around the world, proof that love knows no species. Those dogs are heroes. This elephant deserves a monument. The boy's family posted a heartfelt message, thanking everyone who had shown support. But, above all, they thanked Kanoa, Tycho, and Luma, 3 unlikely friends whose courage had intertwined their lives forever. Weeks later, Kanoa was spotted again near the same stretch of grassland. This time, she wasn't alone. The 2 little dogs sat beside her, tails wagging, as if they were old companions catching up. The boy's mother stood at a distance, watching, with tears in her eyes. She knew this wasn't just a rescue story. It was a bond forged in the heat, dust, and danger of the savannah, and it would never be forgotten.